Guys, what is up? It is Alex here, bringing you a race preview for the 2012 Indian Grand Prix. Now, instead of just putting some boring gameplay with AI in the background of this video, what I wanted to do is show you the race from the Afro League. You can see right here on the screen. It was at China, pretty crazy qualifying, and here you can see in the start of the race we were starting on intermediate tyres, and it was a hard call to sort of tell when we needed to move from inters to dries. So that's some actually entertaining gameplay in the background, and it's actually really fun to watch gameplay in the background. So yeah, in this video I'm going to be doing a preview of the Indian Grand Prix for 2012 and give a little bit of insight of what I think about the race and who do I think is going to win and who do I think is going to have a good race, all that sort of stuff. And also I'd like to say I think it was Sebastian Vettel's first Grand Slam weekend in Formula 1 here last year in the Indian Grand Prix. He won the race obviously, and also he got fastest lap and led every single lap, and also qualified on pole. So I think that's what they call a Grand Slam in Formula 1. He absolutely dominated the weekend, and hopefully it won't be quite as dominant for Red Bull this year as we're going into a title battle, and we don't really want to see Sebastian Vettel run off with it, because otherwise it will make the championship a little boring, even though it's been such an exciting year and we want it to go down to the wire. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through all the teams like we did last time, because that seemed to be the best way to do it and lots of people enjoyed it that way. And hopefully, as this video is going to be about 20 or 25 minutes long, I can actually get more in depth with all the teams and we can see how they're going to go. And also at the end I probably might do like a title predictions for the end of the season and tell you about that at the end of the video. But yeah, let's get into this video and hopefully you'll enjoy it, and yeah. So first off, we'll talk about Red Bull. After they do seem to be the most dominant over the last couple of races, they probably will have the pace here, let's be honest. Maybe in the first sector they might be a bit slower than the Ferrari and the McLaren, but definitely the second and the third sector they will be up there and probably the fastest cars out of the lot. And they've just improved their car so much over the season, and they've done a great job of making sure that they can develop the car and make sure they're just, you know, inch by inch getting better and better. They've made some rash, huge decisions to make the car faster. They've done it slowly, and lots of people say the tortoise wins the race. And you know, Red Bull haven't had the most amazing development over the last couple of years, but you can see here they have certainly done themselves proud and brought the car from about 5th or 6th in terms of like car speed, and now it's right up there, probably most likely it is fastest. So Red Bull, I expect them to be probably 1-2 on the grid this weekend unless one of them has problems, and it's probably going to be Vettel on pole, let's be honest. I mean, Mark Webber can get Vettel sometimes, but most of the time it is Vettel, just because he's got that pure pace on the one lap, and I'm pretty sure Mark Webber could sort of keep up with him in the race, but over one timed lap I think it is pretty most likely Vettel will get pole. And yeah, so Red Bull, they look very strong. I'm pretty sure they're going to be up there, definitely in the top 5 in the race, and most likely both on the podium. Now next up we'll move on to Ferrari, and most prestigious name in Formula 1. In the Japanese Grand Prix it didn't go too well for Fernando Alonso when he made contact with Kimi Raikkonen and was out of the race. Felipe Massa doing himself proud in that race though, getting into the podium and finishing second. And then when we moved on to the next racing career, the Ferrari looked about second fastest to the Red Bull, a couple of tenths slower, you must say that. And you know, in the race pace I'd say Ferrari probably nearly as quick as Red Bull. It's just Red Bull had a dominant first stint and they pulled away, and that's where they sort of kept it for the rest of the race. But I think Ferrari, they're going to be competitive. They're going to bring some huge updates. They know they can win this title. They've got the driver to win this title. Fernando Alonso, widely regarded as the best driver on the grid, and he could definitely pull it out of the bag. Even though Vettel's now got the lead in the championship, I still think Ferrari and Fernando Alonso can do this, and especially if the car's good enough, Felipe Massa can get himself up there again and getting some more points and taking points away from the Red Bull guys. And you know, that's what they really want. They want to take points away from the Red Bulls, and that's what they're going to be aiming to do every single race. But I think this is going to be a close one. I'm going to say that the Ferraris will be right up there with the Red Bulls this weekend. Maybe in the first and second sector the Ferraris can be up there with the Red Bulls, but I think the third sector is going to be Red Bull territory. But for sure it's going to be a close one this weekend, and hopefully the title battle is going to go down to the wire. Now we've gone to a team that's been pretty much going backwards throughout the season, and that is McLaren. They've now lost second place in the Constructors to Ferrari in that last race, I think. and now they're just sort of going slower and slower and slower. Even though Hamilton and Button getting wins in the middle part of the season in, I think, was it Canada and also I think Hungary and Spa, they've won races around there. And then since then they've really fallen off the pace. Ferrari and Red Bull have overtook them, and that shows in the Constructors. Red Bull have a huge lead in the Constructors over Ferrari now. I think it's a massive 77 points going into the weekend, and McLaren are now 6 points behind Ferrari. And considering the season Felipe Massa has had, it's kind of amazing that Ferrari have overtook McLaren in the standings now, and also it's not that far behind to Lotus, which we'll get onto in a minute. But McLaren, it doesn't look like they're going to be too competitive here. I think the first sector probably will be their territory, but in the second and third sector they may lose a lot of time. But I'm not going to discount McLaren because, you know, they can always spring a surprise, and they're saying that they're not going to give up to the final race and make sure that they're going to keep pushing and pushing. But I would say it's probably going to be down to Ferrari and Red Bull. But McLaren, you can never count them out, and it's going to be a decent chance for them to get some solid points. So next up in the Constructors Championship is Lotus, and they're described as the dark horses in the new F1 Racing magazine that came out recently. And, you know, Lotus have been doing pretty well. I mean, even though Grosjean's made contact in about half the races so far in the first couple of laps, they have pulled together some pretty astonishing finishes from a team that last year really didn't have the pace towards the end of the season to even get in the points. So they've made a remarkable comeback, and they always seem to be up there, 6th, 7th, 8th, 5th maybe, I don't know, 5th maybe sometimes. And they all seem to be up there. They seem to have the pace from time to time. And, you know, they've obviously had the pace to win in places like Hungary and Bahrain. They just haven't pulled it together as people would have expected. But definitely, they are never to be counted out. They've got a fast car underneath them. And I don't think they're going for the win particularly here or the rest of the season. I think Lotus have sort of stepped back a little bit in their development stages. And, you know, they're a fast car though. I wouldn't sort of discount them to be on the top 5 or out of the top 5 for this race, considering this race could be very chaotic even though we're going for the title. So I'd expect Lotus to be up there. I mean, even though I'm pretty sure they won't have the pace for the win, I think they're going to still have a decent pace and maybe have the chance for a podium if they're lucky. When we look back over the season, it's pretty amazing to see that Mercedes have won a race and Lotus haven't, even though Lotus have a demanding lead over the Mercedes crew in the Constructors Championship, over 100 points. It's pretty amazing to see how far that the Mercedes car has dropped backwards. And it's pretty astonishing to see that they've just not really had any updates over the last couple of races that have helped them whatsoever. And they've just been falling back and back. And they just have no pace nowadays in that car. Even though I think Michael Schumacher and Nico Rosberg can pull the best out of that car, I don't think they're going to have a pace to even get in the points this race weekend. I mean, even though I'm pretty sure the car's out the points in sort of competitive wise, I think that the drivers can pull it back into the points. So it's going to be a close one. I think they're going to be fighting for like 8th, 9th, 10th in the points this time, and it's going to be a hard one again for the team. And I think next year with Lewis Hamilton and Rosberg, they're putting a lot of time and effort into next year's car already, because they realise that next year is going to be an important year for them for revitalising the team and hopefully getting a couple of wins, maybe even podiums. I don't know. It's going to be a tough one for them, as I said. But yeah, it's pretty amazing that Lotus haven't scored a win in this championship and Mercedes have. And for this race, Mercedes, they'll probably be quite quick in the first sector because that huge straight. But apart from that, I think Mercedes will be off the pace in the last two sectors. And as I said, I expect them to be in the back end of the points for this race weekend. And it's a bit sad to see Mercedes fall back so much. I mean, I have a lot of respect for both their drivers. More for Nico Rosberg because he sort of won the race and he kept up in the points from a lot of the races at the start of the year when sort of Schumacher had his downfall. But, you know, Schumacher's downfall at the start of the season was because of a lot of mechanical failures. But, you know, I'm not a massive fan of Schumacher, but, you know, I'm still respect him as a driver. He's the most successful driver in the sport, so you've got to respect him in some way. And, yeah, so Mercedes probably won't have the pace for the win here, or win points podium. And, you know, they probably can get into the points, as I said, but it is going to be a tough one. Next up on the list this year for the teams and drivers is the team that have collected 4 podiums this year. And I can't remember the last time they collected 4 podiums in a year. They've had an absolutely amazing year this year. They haven't particularly had the fastest car to win a race, but they've had the speed in the car to get some great results. And Sergio Perez moving to McLaren next year, looks like that Perez is going to have an amazing year next year. And also Kobayashi looks like he's actually going to be ditched by Sauber, so that's a bit amazing. Let's be honest, we expected him to stay after his amazing podium in Japan. And it looks like the Sauber are going to have a clean sheet next year for their drivers, and actually could be going for some GP2 drivers like Esteban Gutierrez, people like, I don't know, Fabio Lima, maybe people like that. Maybe they actually, sorry, they got Hulkenberg, haven't they? And they got Hulkenberg, and maybe to sort of have side by side with them, they might have one of the GP2 drivers. We don't really know. It could be something like Alguersuari. That could be quite cool as well. But we don't really know. It looks like here in this race, Sauber could be pretty competitive once again. They probably got on a similar pace to cars like the Mercedes, probably in between the Mercedes and the Lotus. I think they're going to be fighting for points. I think they're going to have the speed for points, and they've definitely got the car underneath them to get some points. And hopefully they got a decent weekend to round off this year. Hopefully it'll be a good one, as I say, for them. And I respect both the drivers a lot, and they've got great respect within the team for each other, so it'd be sad to see them part their ways at the end of this year. But for India, I think they're going to have a decent car, hopefully some points for them, as I said. And let's move on to probably the most anticipated team for India. So Force India, as I said, probably the most prestigious team in India at the moment, maybe except HRT with their Indian driver, but we'll get into that in a minute. Force India come here with some pretty decent pace over the last couple of races. Nico Hulkenberg looks like he's confirmed at Sauber next year. It doesn't look official, but it looks pretty likely that he is there next year. So who's going to come back to Force India, we'll see in tomorrow's video, in my opinion. So yes, Force India had some pretty decent pace in the last race. The Force India seemed to be faster than the Mercedes. It seemed to be nearly as fast as the Lotus, and it seemed to be faster than the Sauber. So overall, it looks like Force India are going to come into India. That's what we're saying. That they're going to come into India with some decent pace, and it looks like they're going to have a decent car underneath them to get some solid points once again, which is really what they want after some pretty sort of hard times in the team, with Vijay Mallya having to sort of pay $2 million or $2 billion or something like that. I didn't really read into that story too much, but a little bit of confusion in the team and a little bit of a bit of drama in the team, let's say that. And hopefully they can come into this race weekend and have a good result, and it'll be good for India obviously because of the Force Indian team, and it'll be just nice to see them get some points towards the end of the season, and hopefully Nico Hulkenberg and Paul di Resta can get some decent results and bring the cars home in some points. So after Force India, we come to a team which have also won a race this year but really not fulfilled their potential in the rest of the season. Pastor Maldonado and Bruno Senna. They look fast, don't they? But they just don't really have the car underneath them at the moment or anymore to get some decent points. And Pastor Maldonado ended his streak of not finishing any races or not getting into the points in any races since his win in, I think it was the Japanese Grand Prix. He got like 3 or 4 points, something like that. And he ended that streak finally, and that put a lot of critics to rest over himself. And Bruno Senna was consistently scoring sort of in the first half of the season, and he seems to have sort of dropped off the rest of the season. He seems to be put back in his place, where Pastor Maldonado does look quite a bit faster than him, and it does look like he's going to be replaced with Bottas for next year, which I personally think is the right decision. And sadly, I think that Senna will be out of F1 next year. And I think Senna's a good driver, but I just don't think he has the potential of being a great driver and potential of winning races like Pastor Maldonado did in Williams. And that's why I think they're keeping Pastor Maldonado, and they're ditching, well, it looks like they're going to be ditching Senna for next year. And Senna is, as I said, a fast driver, but people like Bottas are proposed to be the next Flying Finn or the next Kimi Raikkonen. So Williams is going to be desperate to get Bottas in that seat and get some decent results out of him, because who knows where Bottas will go in the future. He is extremely fast and has outpaced Pastor Maldonado in some sessions, and we know that Pastor Maldonado is a bit of a qualifying dream in some respects, that he's really fast in qualifying, and you can see that he's started in the front 3 places on the grid, or the front 2 rows, quite a lot of the time. But yeah, Bottas has outpaced Maldonado, as I said, so expect Bottas to be in that seat, and expect Williams to not really fare too well in India unless others have problems, which probably will happen. So yeah guys, that is pretty much it for Williams. Let's move on to Toro Rosso. Now, Torosso is a bit of a weird one because they always seem to pull out results in the weirdest of times. And you can see here, I spin around in the Caterham after the dry tyres are really the tyres to be on now. You can see the guy in front of me spun as well. And we've just got to get back to the pits now. The tyres are destroyed. It is not the right time to be on the intermediate. He lost his front wing by crashing out. And I just can't look. I can't even steer in. I'm full lock, like no pace whatsoever. And it looks like this guy's going to go around the outside of me here. And you can see, look, I'm just going around the corner and I'm sliding. It looks like a puncher, but yeah, that's not. We don't want to be talking about the gameplay. We want to be talking about Torosso, what it is. And as I said, they get the results in the weirdest of places. Daniel Ricciardo's been scoring some points recently, which is pretty good for him, and it's good to see him actually get some points. And the Torosso has actually improved. I actually think that Torosso is on pace with the Mercedes now, and that's a matter of opinion, yes. But I think that the Torosso is on pace with the Williams and the Mercedes. But as I said, matter of opinion. But yeah, I think, you know, maybe the Torosso can get points in India. It'll be a tough one for sure, but we can always see that, you know, they always pull out the results, as I said, in the weirdest of opportunities or the weirdest of times. So expect Torosso not to be the fastest, but maybe expect them to get some points if others fail. Now we'll move on to the team. You can see who I am racing for here. We move on to Caterham. They seem to have improved over the last couple of races, and you know, they've definitely got the car underneath them to get some solid results. But you know, it's still sad that none of these back teams have even got close to the points on legitimate pace. But Caterham, they seem to be doing quite well. They did lose a spot to Marussia in the Constructors Championship last time out, I think, or in the last couple of races, which is sad to see for them. But I think next year, or hopefully next year, they will have the car to get close to Toro Rosso, get close to Force India. People like Williams, they can be close to them. That will be sort of the dream for everybody in F1, to see these back teams actually get a bit closer and have the pace to actually fight for some legitimate points, which is all what we all want to see, obviously. So yeah, I expect Caterham to do alright here. Nothing really special for them. I expect it's just going to be a bog standard race of just staying out of trouble and securing some other points, or not points, sorry, securing some other positions, maybe like 12th, 13th. And I think if they get 11th, they can get the place back from Marussia in the championship in the Constructors, which is all they want really, to get a little bit of extra money. But yes, let's move off from Caterham onto Marussia. And they look quite good in recent races after pulling off some decent results in them and getting ahead of Caterham in the standings, which is always a good thing for them, which means they can actually get past Caterham in the Constructors for the first time in these couple of years that they've been racing against each other. And I think it'll be good for Marussia to get a little bit of extra money. I think next year they're getting a KERS unit, and they said if they had the KERS unit, they could actually be the same speed as the Toro Rosso. And that's a bit of a bold statement, yes, but I think, you know, I've got to believe in that. You know, I think the Marussia isn't really that far off the Toro Rosso. With people like Williams, as I said before, they're not that far off them people, and with the KERS unit they would definitely be closer, and maybe even up there, maybe even trying to go for points. Who knows? But yeah, Marussia, they look like they'd be doing alright. Obviously it's just going to be a fight with Caterham once again in the standings, and hopefully trying to get a better position out of it. And as I said, with Caterham, it's going to be another race where they just got to stay out of trouble and get some decent positions. And if they can get, I think, 11th or so in the race, they can actually keep ahead of Caterham in the Constructors, which is obviously what they want, to get a little bit of extra money for developing the car for next year. But yeah, let's move on to the last team in the Constructors Championship, and one that India is going to be very proud of. Now, HRT have not been developing at the rate that lots of people thought they would be this year. They did have a little bit of an update in Singapore, so hopefully their car will be a little bit closer to the pace. And it's been hard to tell. These back teams have always been spread out. Even when, say, Caterham have a faster car, they seem to be just enough ahead of Marussia to make it actually not a race whatsoever. So I wouldn't expect HRT to be anywhere in this race really, but it is going to be a big moment for Narain Karthikeyan. He finished, I think, 17th last year in the Indian Grand Prix, which actually was a pretty good race for him. They beat Jarno Trulli and his teammate in that race, so he definitely had the motivation and the speed to do well in that race. And I think the HRT is not going to be that great. I think it's probably going to be a little bit slower than the Caterham and the Marussia once again, as it has been for the rest of the season. But I expect Narain Karthikeyan to pull it out of the bag this time and actually get a really good result. I expect Karthikeyan to probably get about a 14th and a 15th or something like that in the race, and I expect it to be a chaotic one for him. but I hope he's going to get a decent result, because I kind of want him to stay next year, because he's kind of that really sort of cool guy. I mean, he's not really the fastest guy in the field, but he's kind of a cool guy, he's quite a funny guy, and I kind of want to see him in the sport next year. But, you know, I think lots of people would rather see somebody like David Ozeki or Davide Ozeki in HRT next year, because that looks like where he'd be going if he goes anywhere. Because, you know, he's won the GP2, he deserves at least a race in F1. I think the only person who's won the GP2 and not got into F1 is Giorgio Pantano, I think it is. And it'll be a bit of it obviously would be a bit of a surprise if we didn't see Davide Ozeki in F1 somehow. But yeah, it's going to be a big race for Force India, and an even bigger race for Narain Karthikeyan, and hopefully they can get some decent results when they really need it. So that is all the teams done in this very long video, and we've got about 6 minutes left of the video. So what I want to talk about is the championship, and who do I think is going to win. And it's a tough one, isn't it? Everybody was believing in Fernando Alonso for a very long time when he had this huge lead in the Drivers' Championship, even after the races in Spa. And, you know, Vettel had a bad race in Monza, so it sort of leveled out once again, where the drivers were pretty similar points ahead of each other. And, wow, it's going to be a very tight one for sure. And I'm going to be a bit different, because lots of people are now, as soon as Vettel has some good results, people are like, oh, it's going to be Vettel, it's going to be Vettel. But I'm going to be a little bit different and say it's going to be Alonso. And I always like to be a little bit different, so I'm just going to choose Alonso just for that reason. And also I think that Alonso has a bit more pure talent than Vettel, and that will stir up a lot of controversy, I can tell. But yeah, I think it is going to be Alonso. I don't think he has the car to win races at the moment. Who knows what it's going to be like in India. Maybe Ferrari will pull it out of the bag and actually have a decent car and a decent result. And that's what I hope is going to happen. I hope Felipe Massa can be up there as well, getting some points away from the Red Bulls, as I said earlier on in the video. But I think it is going to be Alonso. I think it is going to be a little bit of an interesting one though, because he certainly doesn't have the car to win the races, but he has a bit more talent, I think, in my opinion. So it's going to be close. If Ferrari develop the car, it's going to be a really close one. And, you know, I want it to go down to the wire. If it goes down to the wire, maybe there's a point sort of separating and going to the last race, I'll be happy. That would be what I'd like to see. And all I want to see really is an entertaining battle for the championship. So as you can see, the gameplay in the background has been sped up a little bit to get to the end of this video a little bit quicker. I know I said it had been 6 minutes, but we'll speed it up a little bit just so we can quickly talk about the teams and constructors. It does look like it's going to be a Red Bull dominated year once again in the Constructors' Championship, as both drivers are competitively, keeping it up there in their points. And, I forgot to talk about Kimi and Webber and Button and Hamilton. I think they'll do well, but it's going to be down to the front two, obviously, to win the championship. And for me, the people that in the Constructors can only take the fight to Red Bull are Ferrari, and it doesn't really look like they can do it either. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I know I was a bit short in the championship predictions at the end of this race, but I hope you enjoyed the gameplay in the background. There's a bit of the Afro League races, and that went down really well. It's my best result in the league, finishing a great 4th position for me, and I had a great setup as well from Dan F1, who supplied me with it on Twitter. So thank you to him. He's my teammate in the league, so obviously we want to give each other a little bit of help. But yeah, a bit more points for Caterham in the Constructors, which is a good thing. But guys, hope you all enjoyed the video. It's been Alex, and I'm out here. Bye.